Hey everybody, first off, don't adjust your sets. I have gotten the gray out of my hair. I know. I've been vaccinated and I kind of feel great that I can go out again. So with that big smile on my face, let's go ahead and get started on part 3 of our learning together, intentionally good instruction. We're going to talk about selecting today, selecting student work. And our objectives are very short today. There's only 2 of them. We're going to develop a process so that you can decide which ideas, which is what we're going to call the what, and the students, who we're going to call the who, or the whom, if you are an English teacher, you will focus on during the discussion. And we are going to determine how, when you're bringing your class back together in a whole group, you're going to engage them in a discussion of the key mathematical ideas of the lesson that's meaningful for all, because that's what it's all about, is making it meaningful when you're together and discussing. Our community agreements haven't changed. I welcome you to come as you are. So if you are seated at the pool with your feet up on spring break, I am so jealous, but thank you for showing up. And if you are at the end of your day and you just can't handle pausing the recording today, the first time through, that's fine. Go through it the first time, and maybe you can come back and think about it a little more next time. The whole idea is that you just come as you are. I get it. So anyway, we're just glad to have you here. Remember that learning is iterative. The 5-step process, we've always gone back and revisited. In fact, remember, there was a 0 step. So we've gone back and revisited the fact that first you have to set your goals, then you have to pick your task. You need to anticipate and monitor. All those come before what we're going to talk about today and are linked to what we're going to talk about today. So it's an iterative growing on process. And finally, the third thing is to embrace the pause. I've created some pauses in this learning. And when you see the little icons down in the bottom left corner, you'll know that slide's going to have some kind of a pause on it. But that doesn't mean that you can't stop the recording anywhere else and to talk about it with your peers, or to just sit and think about it for a while, because this is designed individual or in PLC. So sometimes you're on your own, and that's okay. Just take some time to make sure that you think about what we're talking about. So as I discussed earlier, we are currently on the 3rd of the 5 practices. They, of course, threw in practice 0. So there's really kind of 6 practices. They were kind of tricky there. But we need to set our goals, pick our task. That's step 0. We need to anticipate some of the students' responses and strategies prior to it. And then we need to monitor, walk around and look as they work on the tasks. So all that comes before our idea here of selecting particular student work. So read this statement quietly while I read it aloud to you. When the poet makes his perfect selection of a word, he is endowing the word with life. In this sense, you're the poet. And what you are trying to endow with life is the student work, the student understanding of the student work. And so keep this in mind as we work through today, and think about how you select the student work is really kind of like selecting the words in a beautiful poem. So how do you select? So I want you to pause the recording for just a second. And if you're by yourself, just jot down some ideas or think about some ideas. And if you're together, just brainstorm, do a big brain dump about how you select students to present in your classroom. Go ahead and pause now. Well, while you guys are paused, I was thinking too. And here's all the different ways that I personally can remember picking students for my class before I read this book and took it to heart. So there was always the randomly. And when I say randomly, it counts as the random number generators or the art sticks where you picked up the names. And an app on the whiteboard that maybe spins a spinner, drawing a card. I used to do that a lot. So any way that you talked about randomness goes into that category. I sometimes picked on kids that did raise their hand. I sometimes picked on kids that did everything in their way to keep their eyes off of me and did not raise their hand. Sometimes I picked on those that looked like they were working, and sometimes I picked those that looked like they were not working. Sometimes I let everybody in the classroom share. Sometimes I went alphabetically. Sometimes I went reverse alphabetically. That Z kid couldn't just sit back in the back and wait. And then sometimes I went by seating arrangement. I can remember going up and down the rows, getting answers. So those are ways that I can, like, just on the top of my mind, think. I'm sure your list is as long or longer as you considered it. So I want you to read this silently while I read it aloud to you. It's straight from our book, The 5 Practices. It's this one. And they said that selecting is a crucial decision since it determines what ideas students will have the opportunity to grapple with and ultimately to learn. Selecting can be thought of as the act of purposely determining what mathematics students will have access to beyond what they were able to consider individually or in small groups, in building their mathematical understanding. So as I read through that, and if you need to read through it again, please hit pause and read through it again before we move on. But as I read through that, there were a couple of statements that really like zing hit me. And that was the idea that students are going to have an opportunity to grapple with and ultimately learn. So if I always pick the student that knows absolutely everything about everything, is that giving that person an opportunity to grapple with a new approach? It's always their way. If I always choose the same kids, or if I go alphabetic, I want to make sure that you understand that this idea of grappling with and learning what is happening when you select the students that are going up to the board. And it gives the students the mathematics that they're going to have access to. And even if they know the solution, sometimes they can go beyond what they know by looking at a different approach to it, or a common mistake that students have. So consider the fact that we're going to grapple with it, we're going to learn from it, and we're going to actually move beyond what we know and are able to do, so that this sharing out helps everyone in the classroom. So going back to this list that I had, and again, you have your own lists that you can look at. Here's the 2 big things that I'd underlined: the idea of grappling with and learning, and determining access beyond themselves. I don't think anything in my list really did that. In fact, some of them specifically did the opposite. If I pick a kid that does not know anything about it or has not done anything, what am I doing towards moving towards my goal? If I just randomly, or not randomly, if I just go alphabetically or seat by seat, asking, quick answer questions, how are they grappling with anything? So it really hit me hard when I first read this, because I wasn't doing, I was trying different things and making it so that, more kids were being involved, but it wasn't the work that they needed to be involved in, I think, is what my issue was. So let's look at some of these key questions that support this process of selecting. So the first 2 key questions identify with the student work, okay? Which student strategies would help you accomplish these goals for the lesson? And what challenges did the students face in solving the task? And were there any common challenges? So this is all about the what. This is all about the work that we're going to look at. Then you need to look at the who. Which students do you want to involve presenting their work? And then that little bubble of equity reappears. How might selecting particular students in your classroom actually promote an equitable access to mathematics? Let's go deeper. The what. We need to be sure as we're picking work to share that we look and we consider different solution strategies. Now, we prepared ourselves for this when we set our goals and when we did the anticipate step. We looked for different strategies and different ideas that the students might have. That does not mean we got them all. They will always come up with different ways, but we want those different ways. So look for different solution strategies that are on the right track or that get to the solution. All right. So look for those that are kind of maybe a little not so traditional. Then we're going to look for similarities and differences among the work. All right. So you have this goal in mind. What are the similarities and differences, the features of the work that are important to hitting that goal? And then finally, we talked about it before about the challenges that students face. You know, what are the common challenges? Now, we have to be careful when we're looking at challenges and misconceptions because we don't want to call them, you know, right or wrong. We don't want to say, you know, Denise, come to the board and present your correct solution. And Mike, why don't you come to the board and present your solution because it's wrong? What does that do to a student? So instead we talk about the strategies and we talk about, you know, where did you get to and then what challenge did you have? Or, you know, I saw 6 students in the classroom approaching it this way. What's one little tweak we can make? You know, what's that one little misconception that can help move that forward? Okay. So it's not talking about right or wrong. So we have to watch our vocabulary there. So you might be sitting here thinking, yeah, that's all great, Mary, but when exactly is it that we're going to figure out how I know which student or group of students has these? I mean, how do I know if group 1 has a different solution strategy than group 4? Or if there's similarities and differences at the same table? And the whole idea behind this is that step that's in between anticipating up here and selecting, which is monitoring. You have to be up and walking around the room and asking students questions and figuring out exactly what it is that they're thinking and that they're putting down on their paper and what they can share. And you're taking notes the whole time. Sally says this, you know, Xavier says that, whatever the case may be as you're walking around the room. So now we look at the who. So we've got the what, we've walked around the room, we found the strategies, who actually comes up and presents it? Well, research says that students should share their own work. And here's the research I'm referring to here. And I'm just going to read it straight from their book. So having students present their own solutions can validate the importance of different kinds of mathematical thinking and help the class recognize their peers as valuable intellectual resources for learning mathematics. How many times have I heard you guys when we meet together, you talk about the fact that you wish the students had different avenues to find solutions to problems. You don't want them to always come to you. You need to, you know, they need to go to their book. They need to go to the stuff on the walls in the classroom. They need to look at their notes. They need to look at their past problems. And They need to figure out who in the classroom is valuable in asking questions to, and this can help. Here's that equity piece again. It promotes equitable access to learning in the classroom. Do you know that as soon as 2015, that's only 6 years, all right? So 6 years ago, which is not much time in data or research base, classroom discourse in the US is often stratified with certain students contributing more than others. Still, in 2015, we weren't allowing other kids to share. It was just calling on the same ones over and over again. In addition, students from diverse racial backgrounds are often considered not as good at mathematics as their white and Asian peers. That's 2017. That's only 4 years ago. Folks, we've got to understand girls and boys both know math. African American, white, Asian, Hispanic know math. And we need to open it up so that everyone has a voice. So who you pick can really promote that equitable access and can really share with the students that you believe in all of them. So what I want you to do now, that's why the little think box is up there, is to do some personal reflection, personal. And folks, I don't care if you're sitting with a group of 100 people right now. This is personal. How do you make decisions about which students should present in class? And do your decisions promote or constrain an equitable environment? Are you helping our kids of color believe that they can do mathematics and they are mathematicians? And if not, what are you going to do? All right, but that's not the only challenge. We've got other challenges. I mean, that's a deep one, deep thought. But you also need to think of some other things. Some of the challenges that you may face is that you need to only select solutions that are most relevant to learning goals. When I first started this, I was so keen on it. I'd be walking around monitoring going, oh, I love what you're doing. Oh, I love what you're doing. Oh, I love what you're doing. And I'd have 6 groups. I'm like, everybody present. And they all got the same answers. They're like minute differences. And man, I just shut the kids down. They were just like, we are so over this. They just get disengaged. Okay. That grappling piece has to be there too. And the similarities and differences. I mean, we need to do more than just present all the different problems in the classroom. So it's kind of like the 3 bears, you know. There's the just right at the end, and that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for too many, you're not looking for too few, you're looking for just right. They're just right amount of solutions. You need to expect that there will be usual students in your classroom still that want to present, that always raise their hand. You may also know that they might be upset when you don't pick them, but you need to expand beyond those usual presenters. You need to decide what work to share when the majority of the students are not able to solve the task. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, ding, 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 Mary, that's the one. I have given a task to my students and nobody can solve it. What am I supposed to do? Here's the deal. You need to decide what it is that can move them forward. All right. So if you can find a couple of groups that are on the right track, maybe it would spur on some of the other students. If not, maybe you need to personally jump in and maybe share a question or two that can get them on the right track and move them forward. Don't give the solution, don't give the answer, but you need to get them back on the right path, because you have a goal. We set the goals. That was step 0. We need to make sure the kids stay on the task to get to that goal. And if all of a sudden they're all wrong and all off task, figure out what can help them get back on the right task, whether it's looking at some of the student work or you putting a question or two in. And then finally, if there is this is last ditch. If there's a key strategy or a critical solution, something that you must get to, and it's not produced by the students, you may have to look for another way. Okay. You may have to do some direct teach, a little bit. Do not take this one line as me saying, oh, well, if they can't get it, I've got to share it. No, that was the third step. It says that you give them some help. You find some examples that can move them forward. This last one, only as a last ditch effort. Understand that the goals are set. And if there's a key strategy or a critical understanding that the kids have to have, it's still your job to get them there. So there's that. All right, done preaching. Here's our 3 that we've just talked about. I just wanted to remind you that next time we're going to also be talking about selecting, but next time, instead of linking it to the anticipating and the monitoring to actually pick the work, we're going to talk about selecting and sequencing. So we're going to talk about how to put those pieces in order to actually have the discussion in the classroom. So in getting ready for that, I do need you to do just a little bit of homework. All right. The first homework is the same as always. I want you to reflect on what you just learned and embrace the pause. Give yourself some time to let this sink in. Try some of it in your classroom and see how it works. And then rethink it through and reflect. It's an important piece of what we do. But secondly, there's a task that I would like you to do, because the work that we're going to select and sequence is included here in this link. So I've made it into a tiny URL, so it's very easy to link to. You can jot it down now. It's tinyurl.com/up-down, because that's what it's called, upside down T-task. So it's up, down, capital T. And this is the work, this is the task that we're going to be using as we select and sequence next session. So I want you to be familiar with it as we move forward. As always, if you need any help or if you want to chat about something that you heard today or that you've read in the book, reach out anytime, folks. I am here seriously and will talk to you. Mary Davis at austin.utexas.edu. And with that, we're out of here for another month. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye-bye, guys.